Right, so this stream is all about you guys telling me what to animate, because some of you know what these Challenge the Animator streams are. They're a bit of fun that I do on YouTube, and I like to make it out like that I'm an animator. Just walked into a studio and we're working on such and such series, and whatever it is, or a show or movie or whatever you tell me, I've never may not know what it is. I'll Google it and I'll have a go at animating whatever it is. Charlene Giles says Baloo and Rebecca Cunningham from TaleSpin dancing. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna start from here. I'm just gonna jump straight into this, blah blah blah. You're gonna look how to do live action reference and all that kind of stuff. So let's do it. I'm gonna be very scribbly because I'm not gonna be farting around here trying to make nice drawings for you to admire and swoon over. So this is my reference for the waltz cycle. Okay, so that's the movement that we're going to tackle. Okay, let us now move on to the next half of the stream, where we will be looking at the models of the characters. Now I'm going to tackle Rebecca Cunningham first. Doesn't have to line up. I'm making these drawings just to understand the model. I'm not trying to make it line up, but it's just part of what I'm doing on the live stream. There we go. That is my Rebecca Cunningham study. Let's then work this out. So they claim that he's got a head here, obviously, and then we're going to miss a head, and we're going to start. I mean, honestly, this is not really. So these two heads here are going to start down here. All right. I never like working this way, but I guess it's for, it's always good to check yourself with your proportions. Okay. I still feel that I am ready, right? So this is a challenging thing. So notice I'm not trying to animate Baloo and Rebecca at the moment. All in good time, right? It's almost like I'm doing my own kind of rotoscoping, but I'm not rotoscoping. I'm using my understanding, my own roughing sketches that I made, my reference. This is the basic kind of movement we have, unin-between, just the basic keys that I took of reference of this dancing sequence, right? So here you see how now we're playing with the whole camera aspect. Now, from an editing point of view, it would be nice if, following this shot, if I was going to take this further, you track into Rebecca resting on Baloo's shoulder, and then she could close her eyes in a dreamy way, and you cut back to Baloo gulping and looking kind of like shy and stuff. So you got some good opportunity for storytelling here as well. But that I'm jumping way too ahead of myself. So I'm going to put them into the camera move. I just think the camera move will be nicer. So I'm not going to draw over these poses all, because it's kind of like a boring angle and it's just like the mechanics. So I'm going to start off with, we're still going to do mechanics and stuff, but the camera move just improves the storytelling. So that's what we're going to do. I'm not going to focus too much on anything other than these basic shapes to feel, and then I can work on putting them to model even more. So here we can already see we've kind of got the bare bones of the scene now. The two of them are dancing together, and we can time it much nicer with in-betweens and things. But I'm gonna start drawing the characters. So an hour and a half in, we've got pretty much Baloo down in the keys, right? You can see how he's dancing away. So I am going to get her profile down, because that's the angle haven't quite got to memory. Not bad. Not bad drawing. I like that. Right, now we're going to take it to the next pose here like this. You see, by drawing him, although I was quite loose with him, his drawings are quite strong, but then I'm able to tighten up a little bit on her. So they're dancing in the key poses away like that, right? If we look at our animation with the camera here, it's kind of working anyway, right? But if we look at the steps of the dance, I've left a lot of stuff out, like another step between here and here, which will need breaking down. But I'm not going to animate this because this was just a reference for me to do this, right? I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start breaking this down in accordance to the kind of timing that I want to have. Okay, I'm really breaking down these mechanics of the legs. Okay, so here we see how far we've taken it, right? Now locking these characters down, getting them to this crisp, it's not cleaned up, okay, it's what we call tie down before cleanup, right? And these are just the keys and extremes with maybe a few breakdowns. So that's the time to tie it down. I'm going to go from the belt, and I'm going to, especially if the dress is big, right? I'm going to divide it. I'm going to divide it as if there's a kind of section hanging, and I'm going to create the round hanging from her butt like this, right? Then I'm going to divide it as if there's a section hanging from her side like this, right? And then I'm going to think about the other side hanging like this. All the while I've got to think about the floor pattern and how the dress comes together at the front, right? So maybe it'll be encaved on itself like this at the front. So looking at it like this, we can see what it looks like. The camera view, okay, we can see that we might miss all that nice stuff at the bottom, but we kind of feel it being lifted up as he's taking her to the side. These are just keys and extremes and keys, I should say, not keys and extremes and keys. I'm gonna try and do this in one. I'm gonna have Baloo anticipate in a down, right? And he's gonna pick this foot off the ground, right? So again, I'm not going to draw nice characters in suits and things here. I'm working out stuff, right? Yeah, so there we can see the first step is a lot more interesting now. Yeah, right? So now his little bob of his head is a little extreme here, but can you see how you've got his like change of expression even without drawing his face, right? This is subtle, like this is like, you know, slow, a lot slower. We got a camera move here and they're going to be walking around a lot slower with the camera move, not able to cheat so much. And we're playing with volume and transitioning from their shapes and perspectives without snapping very quickly. You won't see this, okay, because I did this off stream, the background stuff. Because as I said, it's very boring. You can see I've kind of worked out the background looking at some reference images from an episode of TaleSpin called My Fair Baloo and some stills. And then I'd gone and kind of figured out what I was going to do for that. Then off stream, I cleaned up the animation and in between it all and timed it. Now I wanted it all on 2s, but then I was left with a dilemma because the background then would be moving on 1s and then they'd be moving on 2s. So I kind of roughed out this freehand with a bit of perspective on the floor. I roughed out this freehand movement that I wanted, and I said, okay, well, maybe I'll be able to pull it off and I'll have the background on 2s. So then I went and I sort of drew over my roughs with ruler, right? And you can see like that if you're keen-eyed, you can see that the perspective is not 100%, but I don't care, right? Because the characters are going to be like here and we're going to block out all the frames and I just wanted to get through this really quickly. Now you'll also notice that I animated some shadows moving. Well, because I had to individually paint each and every one of these frames, right? Make each frame look like this, okay? So you got frame 1 here, you got frame 2 here, right? You got frame 3 here, you got frame 4 here, right? I'll just go up to frame 5, right? There's altogether 14 frames of these, right? Now, as I said, this whole thing would have looked better in CG and worked better in CG, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to just do it for my own sake. And we ended up with, this is what we had, right? So that was it without any additional camera work, right? So we can see what it's looking like here. And now here I've started putting additional camera moves on it to put everything, to give it that one's feeling of everything. So a little bit of slight camera work on the movie file to give it that feel. So the next scene that's going to hook up is after he drags her away. I've blocked out the keys, and we're going to be doing some breakdowns on this today. That's added a whole new dimension to it, right? So the reason why I'm keeping her up here is I want to really slow into this point, right? I wanted this to be lasting almost a second worth of animation. And what is it? It's almost like a figure of 8. Like she's going around there and then here and then up this way and then down. So not quite figure of 8, but it's this kind of thing. Anyway, let's continue to show you what I mean, right? So there we go, right? So now you can kind of see the continuity happening. They're dancing. He whisks her away, then puts her down. So those of you in real animator training that do the varied head turn with that head, robotic head looking from all those angles, I hope when you're watching this you can see why I take you through that and where it will result in your own training. Alright, so we're going to be talking about squash and stretch. You can see here he's taking a gulp, and he's getting this, he's getting quite squashed in this frame here. And it's a bouncing ball trick. We're going to bounce up into it. And we're going to have some hang time here, but not too much, because we don't want to hang on the distortion. So maybe just one frame in here, and then we're going to come out of it quite quickly. So we've taken the thumbnails and we've just looked at them in action like that, right? And we can see that already we've got animation, almost animation going on here, right? We have taken those thumbnails and we have made extreme animation out of them. So if we look at this, we can now see what it looks like after I've roughed it out. Okay, with the secondary action and the keys. So these are all keys, right? Keys not even broken down yet, right? The breaking down is when I will work out my timing even more, right? So these are keys and extremes. And you can see down here, where is it? Oopsie, let me press my space. I've got two charts. I've got one chart for the head, and one chart for the hand and the glass. Now some of you in the Real Animator training library remember the heavy ball effect, where the ball is up here. Let me draw on this layer. The ball's up here, it immediately drops to the ground, and then it kind of staggers, so it goes up again, and then it goes back down to the ground, and it goes halfway up again, and then it goes back down to the ground, and then it goes halfway up again and down to the ground, and we get this kind of bum 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 kind of feel. Maybe I was right. Maybe my chart was right. Looking at it, maybe it needed a little bit more. No. That little bounce gives it that little effect, you see. So now, while this is happening, I want you to visualize this thing as a whole. All of the rest of him will be just slowly moving into position between here and here, right? So you see, reaches for his drink, he drinks, and he wipes his mouth and notices something and looks. So we're animating two characters together at the moment, but I'm not going to talk so much about the staging between the two, but I've been blocking out the Shere Khan main poses in relation to the poses that the Don Carnage character is acting. So Shere Khan is deep in thought. He notices Carnage sort of looking at his drink and smelling it, and he's sort of looking at him in a very sort of unimpressed way, and he watches him raise his glass. Then he's really uninterested. He turns his head and is just sort of like bored out of his wits, and then he turns again to see Carnage behaving rather brutish, wiping his mouth with his sleeve. And basically Shere Khan kind of like decides to open his claw and gesture to Don Carnage where to be looking. Now we can see that the little downward antic or anticipation or is really helping that movement as he rises up out of his chair, right? And we can see I'm going to really enjoy breaking all of this stuff down. So hopefully that gives you an insight. Remember, the bouncing ball. That's why I make such a fuss about it.
So, AMB is the greatest archive anyone could ever ask for.
You know, of all the books I've read, of all the other online tutorials I've seen, this was the missing key.
Every video is like packed with this information that I would never be able to get anywhere else. So I would say this is the greatest resource for learning animation.
For me, AMB Animation Library is hands down the best animation learning resource that I've seen. I've tried all the tutorials, I've gotten all the books. I've never been able to really grow until I found AMB.
And it's incredible. I've only just begun it, but I definitely am getting more from that than I did from my 1.5 years of college.
I've noticed definitely that my animation has improved a lot, and it's more alive than ever. And what I also like about his animation training is that you also gain real confidence.
Reanimated Training Library is unequivocally the best resource for animation, 2D animation, traditional hand-drawn animation that I've seen.
So I wholeheartedly recommend the AMB Real Animator Training Library to anybody who wants actual knowledge and actual applicable concepts to create their own animation and to move forward in the field of animation and to set your work above those that are just kind of teaching themselves and not learning these tried and true classic concepts.
AMB is motivated by his students' successes and improvements. He's a great teacher, a great animator with over 20 years experience in the industry, so you can't really get much better than that. I strongly recommend him to anybody.
I'm thinking on how to put in words what I feel about it. I love that. It approached me from my dream of becoming an animator. Every cent I paid in there was worth it.
I like that the library is structured. I can go back and watch it anytime I want to, and he's just got so much knowledge. And I just highly recommend it to anyone who's out there looking to learn traditional 2D animation.
So thank you, MB, so much. And thank you so much for all you done for me.
So, are you gonna join the library?